anyone. But there we are. Screen's on. We're good and going. So hopefully we'll be able to see a lot more tonight, and there's a lot more to talk about. So let me turn camera on. I am down in the bottom right-hand corner. So I am a real person. I'm not a robot, although you haven't seen me on a dance floor, and I do go pretty good on dance floor, I say myself. So tonight's going to be about something, hopefully, that's going to open up your mind to something is different in the property game. And when I say different, it's because we call it back to the future, essentially. We're doing what we used to do in 1970, and what we've done is brought it forward and modernized what we're doing. So we call ourselves the Uber of property, I suppose. And there's one strategy I'm going to talk to you about tonight that is very different as far as how people have thought about property in the last 10 years. And what I want to make sure that you understand is that when it comes to property and making sure that you invest correctly, that if you follow the herd, then you're going to end up stepping in the stuff that they leave in front of you. So I want to make sure that whatever you do tonight is some thought provocation for you to be able to go, okay, well, I'm going to think a little bit differently. And I'll say up front, you know, if 10 years ago you decided that you were going to start investing in granny flats, then you'd be really, really well off today, because no one was doing them back then. You started, and then all of a sudden you're doing really well, but everyone is doing them now. So I just want you to understand that tonight is about having the ability to take action, to be able to step into something new, and something new, but in 10 years' time, it won't be new. We're talking about Bitcoin nowadays. If you did it 10 years ago, you'd do really well. If you did it at 2014, you'd do really well. If you did it last year, you'd be doing it okay. But everywhere I go on Facebook now, everyone's actually doing a multi-level marketing Bitcoin strategy for you. So I want to make sure that you understand that we're the first that's in the big blue ocean right now, and in 10 years' time, there's going to be lots of us doing the same thing. I want you to be part of those people now that take the opportunity. So let's talk about me just quickly and about who I am. I am pretty casual, as you can see. You know, I haven't shaved today. I don't need to shave. My office is, I'm sitting in my office. My home is about 20 meters that way, and we've got a nice 2-acre waterfront property on the Sunshine Coast. And ironically, the Sunshine Coast is raining right now. That's very typical of up here, and it rains at night and it's dry during the day, which makes it reasonably humid, especially when you run somewhere between 7 and 36 Ks a day like I do. So I am going to talk really quick, because what I'm going to be doing in the next hour is I'm going to squeeze in the next hour what I normally would do in 90 minutes. Then I'm going to give you the opportunity to have a look at what we do and how we do it. And I'm then going to give you the full-on case studies for some time after that when you've got questions. So about an hour of me talking really quickly, and then there'll be a position for you to be able to ask some questions. And then I'm going to take you through a number of different deals that our clients have been doing. Now, I don't sell you property. I refuse to sell people property. It's a conflict of interest. If I go and develop something and I make it my own and then sell it to you at a higher price, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. Now, we do have a number of different things coming up and opportunities coming up, and we do have teams that will sell you a property if that's what you want to do all over the country. Me, I am a plumber by trade. I have come from a family of plumbers. My brother, my father, my nephew, my brother-in-law, and myself, we're all plumbers. We're all from the same family. And I came through the business. I ended up going into TAFE New South Wales as a teacher. I became a head teacher and then became an assistant director of business. Now, for me, I was very fortunate for the fact that I loved my job as a teacher. And it's not because I couldn't do my trade. It's actually I'm very good with my hand skills and very good with my theory. I just really love teaching. It's what I do on a daily basis and what I do with lots of clients. And it's my passion. And I have worked towards another passion in recent times. And that came about because I went down the standard road of actually investing in property and getting to about $36,000 negative cash flow. So that is $692 came out of my pocket every Monday morning before I even got out of bed. And I realized that when my new boss walked up and ruined my job in 2 days, that I couldn't get out because I had to pay that roughly $700 a week towards interest rates and a few other negative costs on the property. Now, I worked really hard to get educated and got myself into a position with my wife, and I'm not going to take you know, she's done the majority of the work. I'm simply the person that goes out and does what I can do, and she's the director, basically. And within 13 months, we were in a position after getting educated you're in a position to no longer be in paid employment. So it's a really important point that I want to make for you. Before the education, we did nothing. After the education, completely different. We actually had a set of strategies and different opportunities to move forward. Now, we had to lose $300,000 so that I could start again. And that $300,000 set us up for the rest of our last 10 years. We've been in property for 10 years. I am a board member of the Future Housing Task Force. So apart from the fact that I'm a plumber, I'm also a builder. I have a degree in teaching. And I sit on a couple of boards, and the board positions I sit on are for reasons to actually make better what we're doing. And the Future Housing Task Force is about bringing back the great Australian dream. I'm a media spokesman. I'm Deborah Hutton's go-to man when it talks about property and affordability, and particularly a specific demographic. And she really is passionate about women and women of over 50, and that's where I sit in with her. And I've written a book called Small Isn't Your Big. Yeah, I've got a number of them on the shelves there that if someone wanted to buy one, they could. And that book is Health, Wealth, Love and Happiness. It's actually about my story from about 4 years ago, where I was going to be the biggest developer in the world, and I'll explain a bit more about that means as we go through the night. And I'm really excited. There's a lot of you on here, and I know you've got a chat box there, so my best I'll do. If you are having problems, make sure that you are on Firefox or Chrome, and then that way you'll actually have a better connection. And so, I travel all around the country as a board member, and I get to influence ministers, premiers, different bureaucrats at top government levels about making change in government policy. And what my clients benefit from is that I know that they're coming ahead of schedule. I'm going to be talking about Tasmania tonight and how exciting the whole area of Australia is, and in particular in Tasmania. So what I'm going to talk about tonight, how you can beat double-digit returns, and this is where I'm going to ramp up and speak really quickly. So double-digit returns are 10, 12, 14, 16% returns, gross returns, so that on a net return, you're actually getting far better than what you would in a normal circumstance. So let me give you an example right now. In Sydney, if you bought a property, you would probably get somewhere between 3 to 4% return. 3 to 4% return. I want you to get 10, 12, 14, 16%. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. Standard strategies will replace your income. So if you went into deals and then you decided to, excuse me, if you decided that you were going to go into a property deal, do a subdivision, sell half off, pay down debt, keep that one, get on the next one, it'll take you 10 to 20 years to be able to replace your income. It will replace your income, not quick enough. I'm going to talk about some live student deals that are around the place and that I've got here. I've got figures on them. I do have to check the figures 14 days before this presentation, so they are real. I've got to talk about the benefits and incentives around the country that the state governments and councils and policies and other bureaucrats have put in place for you to benefit from. Tax exemptions, money in your pocket if you produce the right style of product. Now, you should be doing it if they're paying for it. There's a huge untapped marketplace. So what's happened in the last 40 or 50 years is Australia's built a particular type of property which actually isn't really suited to the needs of the community. And I'm going to show you how, because they're not catered for that community, that you've got an opportunity to take advantage of this untapped. And the start of a movement. Remember I said right at the beginning of this, if you want to start doing granny flats now, you're way too late. If you want to start doing Bitcoin now, you're way too late. If you want to do Airbnb now, you're probably in a saturated market. You've got some potential if you've got the right people to help you, but you could be too late. And right now you're at the start of a movement, and the next 5 years is really going to take off, and a particular strategy that I'm going to talk about as well that will make a difference to you every day of the week. So who should be doing this? Well, if you're an investor that sits there and thinks, you know, I should have more money in the bank, I've worked really hard, and I'm in a position where I don't have enough money, I don't have enough property portfolio, and I want more, high res is for you. If you're a person with low risk and high gain. Now, I worked out that I was low risk by going into high risk properties, and I don't want you, I suffer from anxiety, I'm happy to admit to that, and have done since I was early teenage years. And from that, I worked out that going into a property that was in a high risk area wasn't for me, and I'll talk about that in a second. If you're a low risk person with a high gain, two things that don't normally go in the sentence together, then high res is for you. If you want to grow your portfolio quickly, you might say, you know, I've only got 10, 20 years left before I have to retire, or I might be already in retirement age and I want to make the best of what I've got right now, then high res is also for you. If you're in a position that you hate your job, Because if you hate your job and you want to get out quickly, I know what that feels like, then Hi-Rez is for you. And I also say that if you love your job, you also should be trying to get out as quickly as possible. And not that you'll leave your job, but replace your income. So at the very least, if you have a bad day, you can say to the boss, thank you very much. It's been nice knowing you. I'm going. And if you can walk up to a mirror and stand for about that far away from it and you can go, and it fogs, then you should be doing Hi-Rez as well. Now, I was going to fog this camera here, but I got told not to because you don't want to look down my throat. So if you can fog a mirror, basically what I'm saying is anyone that is in the position listening tonight should be in the position to actually want to do Hi-Rez because of the reasons and the things it's going to do for you. Now, what we're not about creating debts and forgetting about them and continuing to increase your debt. I'm about paying down debt. Remember, I've already told you about low risk, and the day that you pay off a mortgage will make you feel really good. Now, don't pay it off completely. Leave it at about $1 or $2 and make sure you can redraw on those funds because the next deal will come along and you want to be able to use that money and you want to be able to get onto it quickly. So we're not about creating debts and just forgetting about them. That's a bad strategy, bad high-risk strategy. It's not about using illegal schemes. Now, these people around that'll go out there and tell you how to use a policy and use it in a slightly different way, which is completely illegal. If you're going down the road at 110 Ks and it's a 100 zone, even if you didn't see the sign, if you get pulled over, you will get fined. So ignorance is bliss. What's important here is that we've got a whole set of rules and regulations that we're going to talk to you about tonight, which has been completely vetted, completely understood, completely complied with, and everything that you do is going to be done to the letter of the law. It's useless doing non-compliance if you're going to put yourself in trouble. This is not about a non-supportive community. I'm going to give you the opportunity tonight to be part of this community and see how it operates and how it works. And we are, firstly, I'm here to support. My wife, Christine's here to support. I've got a number of staff members that sit in this room that also will support you. We've got team members all over the country. So when I talk about a particular strategy, which will be new to you, and you're not quite sure where to turn, we've got designers, planners, we've got architects, we've got engineers, we've got certifiers, we've got different agents all over the country to help you do what we talk about, because it is a specialized area and it is very important that you have the right support and the right people that know what I talk about. And this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. You know, if you've joined and you think that you're going to be part of a program that's going to change your life, unfortunately, I've got some bad news for you. Programs don't change your life. How you use the program does change your life. So I want to make sure that you understand very clearly and very concisely that this is about doing some work. Now, if you can't do 4 hours a week or 3 hours a week, then you're kidding yourself. You know, don't join the community yet. Try to find a way, and I can teach you ways how to save yourself some time, which includes getting up early. I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, at bed 11:30 sometimes. So, you know, understand that you can survive on less sleep than currently what you are, and that to do the work to get to the point. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to sleep 3 hours or 4 hours a night like I do at times. I'm suggesting that you are going to have to do, no one is going to do the job that you need to do. And we want you to learn how to fish. We've got your fishing rods. All you need to do is actually learn how to do the fishing. So that's really important. Let's talk about our problems. So top left-hand corner up here. So let me circle this as we go. So up here, I will clear that, and no, I'll actually fix that up in a second. So that top left-hand corner is a mining town. So in a mining town, the last thing that you want to do is put yourself in a position where, you know, it's going to go downwards very quickly. And the last thing you want to do is do that, because effectively you're going to put yourself in a position where you're going to be staring at the ceiling at nighttime, and the last thing you want to be doing is staring at the ceiling at nighttime. It's a very, very bad way to be. And, you know, mining towns can go up very quickly and down very quickly. I know that I've seen some sell for $760 after bankruptcy down to $150. I've seen rents go from $2,600 down to $350, and I know that because one of those is our property. So you don't want to have to ride that. It's very awful. It's not a good place to be. You can get positive cash flow now if you want to go, but really, seriously, don't really think that you should be doing that risk. Commercial people say, well, you can get high yield. Great, if you're a sophisticated investor. If you're not sophisticated, you'll pay $1 million for that property. You'll need $300,000 to $400,000 of deposit to be able to get into it. On top of that, you then have a tenant that's in there that's on a 5 by 5 year lease. 4 years, 9 months or 10 months in, they ring you and say, look, we're not going to take up the extra 5 years, and you've got no choice about it. And once they leave, you haven't got anyone out the front going, geez, I really need that property, because it's not residential. It's a commercial property. It's very specific for a type of company. Now, I don't want anyone going into that place and being in that place where you're actually at risk, going from possibly 20 grand cash flow to 60 grand negative overnight. It's really bad. And down the bottom left-hand corner, I've got a mate of mine who's investigator for, used to be in the police force, now is an investigator for Sydney City Council. They found a 3-bedroom home that had 58 beds in it. Compliance officers went in and did a raid, and they had 58 beds in this property, 3-bedroom house. Now, this is ridiculous, right? I can tell you with all certainty that that is positive cash flow, but at what risk? Because if you go and do that and something happens in that property, no insurance is covering you, you're going to lose everything in your name, and you possibly could end up in jail. And the last thing you want to do is do that. That's why you have to be fully compliant. And then I've got the set and forget in the top right-hand corner. So if you look at this example down the bottom here, and it's actually 4 townhouses side by side. This is a property that we own. We bought the property. Within 10 days, we actually got approval to subdivide. So there's actually a boundary through that garage. We knocked down the old house. We got 10-day approval again to build the duplexes on each side. So there's actually 4 units. And if you built this normally, it costs us about 1.4. It ends up being a value of 1.8. It's a bit more than 1.8. You have an end value of roughly $450,000 each. And each one of those would normally rent for $450. But because of the strategy we chose to put on this property, we, instead of getting $450 a week, where it would be negative cash flow of $13,000, $7,000, $13,000 negative, because we do what we do to that property, we take the rent from $450 to $700 a week, which means we get $2,800 across the whole lot, and it's now a $21,000 positive cash flow property. So the set and forget strategy is about buying one of these, getting it neutral, selling off half, going on. But if you sold half, you're then in a position where you don't have the wealth in 10 years' time. Everyone knows in property in Australia, every 7 to 10 years, it doubles in price. So if you sold half now, in 10 years' time, you're actually look worse off because you don't have the advantage. So why not keep it and get positive cash flow from it at the same time? Now, that's positive cash flow after all costs. And yes, I'll have to pay tax, but yes, I'll also get depreciation from that as well. So very, very important. Now, where does the problem start? The problem starts in 1881 in Australia. We had houses that were about 35 square metres, so the size of this office, and in that house were 5.5 people. Skip forward to 1960. In 1960, we built an 85 square metre house with 3.8 people in it, built by a guy called A.V. Jennings. It was 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom. Move forward to 2014, 15, 16, we build the largest houses in the world at 246 square metres. There's 2.5 people in each one of those houses, and there's 12 million empty bedrooms in Australia tonight. And if I took my team of Australian builders to Hong Kong and I said to them, build an Australian house in Hong Kong, please, I could fit 22.6 Hong Kong houses in one Australian house. Now, that is ridiculous. If I took the number of people in an Australian house and put them into that Hong Kong house that was an Australian house, there'd be 56.5 people living in that house. We've got an affordability problem, and we've got a massive issue. And the massive issue is we've only got 2.5 people in every 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, the most ridiculous product that's ever been built. So when we look at the University of California, they followed around 36 families for 4 years, and they tracked where they went in the house. And where did they go? They went into the kitchen, they went into the family room, and they went into the informal dining room. The formal dining room, the formal living room never got used. And so why have we got all these big spaces when we don't actually use them? Now, I'm not saying for you not to live in that space. I'm saying you can live wherever you want. I don't really care. But if you're going to go out and you're going to invest in property, make sure you invest in the right style of property that's really in demand. And I'm going to show you some numbers very soon around why you should be actually building smaller and building smarter. So I quickly got there. It's not how big the house is, but how happy the home is. And the reason I put that there is because I'm a public speaker and I'm standing on a stage in Cairns. And I said, I'm standing there talking about smaller housing, how we can actually reduce the affordability issue in the country, why homelessness can be fixed, why 25 and 35-year-olds can actually live cheaper and save rent, how 55 and 70-year-olds can actually get a better place. And all of a sudden, I realised that I was leaving that conference and I was going home to a 400 square metre, 4-storey home where our master bedroom was an 85 square metre room. So I went home, spoke to my wife, Christine, and I said, we've got to make a change here. So we got rid of that property and we bought a property that had an 85 square metre, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home in it. And we moved into that. And then I realised after a few days that something had changed in our family, because it wasn't just Christine and I that moved into that family, into that home. We actually have 4 daughters. So 6 of us in 85 square meters, 2 bedrooms, and so we had to be very adaptable. 1 bathroom, I could have put more in, but I decided not to, because all of a sudden we interacted just like I interacted with my family when I was younger and I was growing up and playing with the kids in the street. And my auntie Carmel next door that actually lived in a cladded house, and I lived in a spackle rendered house with arches in it. And I started to realise that my family unit wasn't dysfunctional. I can't say it's normal. I don't think anyone's family is normal. But one thing I can say was we started to operate differently. And we started to argue more, but we couldn't hide in corners. And I could see my kids on the computer right there in front of me. And all of a sudden we started to be a family, a proper Australian family like they were 30 and 40 years ago. And so I realised at that point in time that family is the start of community, which is a very important part of the Australian landscape and something that we've lost over the years. So let's look at what we want you to get. We don't want you to get the rule of 2. And the rule of 2 is basically if you buy a property for $450,000, times it by 2 and take off the 3 zeros. So $450,000, I should get $900 a week rent to get it neutral. At $500,000, I need $1,000. Now you think, can't buy something for $500,000 and rent for $1,000. Well, I'm going to change that for you tonight in that perspective. I want you to show you, I'm going to show you with figures that you can do 3, 4, and 5s. So let's look at the problem here, right? The problem is that in metropolitan Melbourne, if you look at the left-hand side here, and you look at this area here, and why not I working? Let me get me some colour in here. So let me get some colour up for you. But if I went to metropolitan Melbourne and I decided that I was going to build a 4-bedroom house, have I got a line? I have. Let me change my colour. So if you look up here, if I build a 4-bedroom house and I rent it to the market in metropolitan Melbourne, I'm going to get $420 a week for a 4-bedroom house. However, if I built a 2-bedroom house, I'm going to get $415 a week. Can we see a problem here? The problem here is that people are building bigger houses because that's what they've built for the last 30 or 40 years. Why build an extra 100 square meters when you're going to get no different a return? And the reason people are paying that amount of money, $415 for a 2-bedroom, is because they don't need a 4-bedroom and they'd much rather look after a smaller spot. Now, if we look at metropolitan, in metropolitan we've got $360, and for a 2-bedroom we've got $250, but for a 1-bedroom house, $180. So half the rent. And I can tell you, if you can take this property and split it up into 4, 5, 6 smaller compartments that are self-contained, you will double the rent on that every day of the week. And you say, oh yeah, but you know, what sort of people are going to rent in this? Well, we'll talk about that. Now, the definition of affordability in Australia is spending no more than 30% of your gross wage, so that's before tax wage, on rental or on mortgages. Now, in regional Queensland, 65% of the people that rent or have to pay a mortgage are in housing stress. And if I go to metropolitan Melbourne, in metropolitan Melbourne, let me clear that, in metropolitan Melbourne, only 3% of the people that live in metropolitan Melbourne, in all the suburbs in Melbourne, only 3% of people can afford to live according to the definition of affordability. So that means 97% of people are under housing stress. This is a really big problem that needs to be fixed. So who are the type of people that will rent? Well, we've got the first timers. They've just finished university, they get out, they get their first job, they meet, they become a partner, and they move in as couples. We then have professional people. And professional people are those doctors or nurses or legal people working their way up the ranks of their legal firm, and they work 60, 70 hours a week. You give them a two power sockets so they can plug in their phone, plug in their computer, and some Wi-Fi, and they're happy as. And then you've got the mature age women. So let me talk about this. The mature age woman is the biggest growing demographic of homelessness in the country right now today. So imagine this. You're a woman, you get told at the age of 20, about 30 years ago to 40 years ago, you get told, find a good man with a good job and you'll be right for life. A man is your plan. That was their message, right? That was the message. And this woman worked for a few years, 5 to 10 years, and then became pregnant and then started looking after the kids. Now, it's an unfortunate thing that in this world, that as soon as a woman's out of a job for longer than 18 months, she's considered damaged goods. And I'm really distraught around that's the fact. And so that woman looks after one child, two children, and for 20 or 30 years, she looks after the home. She looks after everything that needed to be done. She organises events, makes sure that everyone gets to school, their lunch, all the after-school activities, the weekend sports. And the kids grow up and they leave home, and the husband looks at her, or she looks across at the husband and says, you know what, about 15 years ago, I sort of really couldn't stand the sight of you and I want out. And so they go through this process of a financial settlement that doesn't quite work out in their favour, and they might have $50,000 or $100,000, and they go outside and they start living, and because they didn't have a job, they get themselves in a position where no one will employ them, and their money starts to go down, and it goes lower and lower and lower. And you might know someone just like this. You might have a friend who has a parent like this. It might be actually your parent. And eventually they get to the point where they're happy with their standard of living, but their money has disappeared. And so they wear nice clothes. They have a mobile phone. They do go out and have dinner or lunch every now and then, but they're living in their car. And so for me, I can't express to you how important it is that these women deserve something much better than what they've got. And unfortunately for them, the next phone call they get is from their parents, who are 70 years old and are in a very similar position and need to be helped and looked after. And so I'm about to show you a slide, and if you see red on this slide, you're essentially in a position where the 70-year-olds in this area are living on less than $3.99. And if you see dark red, 75% of the 70-year-olds in these areas are living on less than $3.99 a week. So if I was going to show you these areas down here, all of these areas in here, this is Southeast Queensland, it doesn't change where you go, but this whole area there, 75% of the 70-year-olds are living on less than $3.99 per week. And the average rents in these areas, the minimum rent in this area is $300 a week. So they've got $100 to either pay for heat or pay for eat. That's their choices, utilities or food. And these are people that have worked for this country for 50 years. And we go to bed comfortably every night, and they go to bed every night worrying about how they're going to pay for bills and whether they need to pay for medication the next day. And added to this problem, in 10 years' time, if you walk down the street, in most of the areas, every third person that you walk past will be over the age of 70, living on less than $3.99, because their money doesn't go up that much, not compared to the cost of living. And so they're going to be worse off than where they are right now. So I suppose your question is, Ian, well, if you're a developer and you're doing really well, why are you here? I'll tell you why I'm here. 4 years ago, we were smashing out developments, and they were just standard everyday developments that every developer would do. And I considered myself to be successful. Money in the bank. And I always thought that money was going to make me happy, and it didn't make me happy. It actually made me really sad. Really, really sad. And so I got up one morning and something had to change. And that book that I wrote was the change. I'd look at my entire life and say, why was I so unfulfilled? Why was there a big hole in my heart when I thought I was going to be really happy? And the fact is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, the money is actually not going to make a difference to your life. People say it makes it easier, but it's not going to make a difference to your life. It's not going to make a difference to your happiness, and ultimately we all go for happiness. So I looked at what we did, and I looked at what was needed, and I looked at the housing market. And for me, going from the biggest developer in the world to someone who really makes every day different for someone else. That's why I'm here. And we started building a particular type of property, which we'll talk about very soon. And I actually didn't know about the 55-plus-year-old woman until we started building these properties, and people started turning up, and they would knock on the door. And they're really great residents. They look after our house. They become the adopted mother in the property. They become really stable, nice energy in the property. And they pay every week because it's cheaper for them. And then another one knocked on the door, and another one knocked on the door, and I realised there was a huge problem. Now, Christine and I have set ourselves a goal of producing 10,000 self-contained rooms in the next 10 years. And ultimately, my big gameplay is actually 1 million of them. And Christine and I can't do 1 million. I'm not willing to put myself through the stress of doing that, especially when I suffer anxiety. But what I can do is I can teach other people to do the same thing. And then that way we can make a difference in the market. And in 10 years' time, when we put 1 million properties out on the market, and 1 million rooms out of the market is what I mean, and each one of us has contributed towards that, that means that people can afford to live, and the rents will stagnate, and property prices will stagnate. And along the way, though, as an investor, you'll do really well. So the real reason I'm here is for a really big picture, and a picture that's actually going to make a difference to the Australian landscape. And I'm sorry. I get really emotional around the fact that we go into bed tonight in a really comfortable bed, and at the end of the day, if I can teach people to do really well out of property, and at the same time they're actually helping out the community, and they're giving 25 to 35-year-old people the opportunity to buy something new, and we're putting less stress on government to provide housing, then ultimately I can't see why I should be doing what I'm doing. And so it's just something that I can't stop. I have to continue doing what I'm doing. And my message is that I do this with all my heart, and I do this with all the integrity in the world. And I know there's people that aren't ready to see a male cry. I know there's people that aren't ready to do this, and that it's all too good to be true. And that's okay. I'm completely okay with that. However, I've got a tribe and a community of people around me that are all on the same path and all working towards the same outcome. And all I need for you is to understand that the real reason I'm here is to actually benefit the community. And so this is what tonight's about. So let's talk about the style of property that I'm talking about. And so I just flew in front of you the word boarding house. And I know automatically you've thought, oh no, I'm not going to do a boarding house. There's no way in the world. And the fact is, a boarding house in 2017 is not what it was in 1970. We're talking about micro apartments. We're talking about self-contained little compartments of property that make a big, big difference to the people that want to rent it, and a massive difference to the fact that you can provide it. And so let me first hit you with the perception issue, because your perception is that you're talking about a 1970s style home that's all divided up into rooms where people share bathrooms, and you've got a dirty old man in the corner that smells like urine, and there's a bikie, and there's a criminal, and there's a drug dealer living in the property. And look at those properties on the right-hand side there. They're not properties that we have drug dealers and criminals in. These are oversized hotel rooms that have a kitchen in it, that have a bathroom in it, and they have a area that can live in quite comfortably. So they can cook in there as well. Now, it just happens to be that just outside this room, there's a communal kitchen as well that makes a big difference to everyone in that house, because they all talk to each other. And all of a sudden, we've got community back. So I want you to tell you that we do have a number of... That's Christine that just walked behind me. That's my wife that's just walked into the office. So what you need to understand is that we've got a whole community producing this style of accommodation. And it's just beautiful to see that they are doing for the community the right thing, and that they don't have that many complaints. you're always going to have rental issues if you decide to be a property investor. It's just a fact, right? You are going to get some residents that aren't going to be great for you, and it's very important to understand that there's ways to deal with that, and we just manage managers. That's what our job is. But I want you to understand that tonight I'm going to be talking about a number of different strategies, and they involve taking the existing large stocks of market of property that we've got and breaking them down into smaller components. And legally, with full compliance, with all the rules and regulations that you have around the country. And what I'm going to talk about quickly is the type of class of building. So a 1A building. So when we talk about a 1A building, which is this one here, we're talking about a normal house that you live in. So talking about a house that is a brick veneer, double brick or lightweight construction, and you live in it with your family. That's a 1A construction building. Now, a 1B building is exactly the same, except the difference is that there's link smoke detectors, there's disabled access into it, so that there's a disabled bathroom and a few other things, and there's ways of being able to do these without having to include that if it's an existing property. You have fire escape plan. You have a plan on the back of the door to get people out the front door. The link smoke detectors I talked about, an emergency light linked to the smoke detectors, and a front door handle that allows you to get out the front door. There's not a huge difference between a 1A and 1B. So, it's really exciting to know that you can work down that. Now, Anthony, I'll talk about our program and how you can get a few different things. And you can start with very little. I'm going to introduce you to a strategy that our students have been doing and we've been doing for a couple of years now, and making a big difference. And you can start with as little as $10,000. Now, $10,000 to get into property, people might say, what? And I'll show you, actually, I haven't got the slide on it, but I'll give you an example. We rent a property from someone else in Brisbane, and we spent $10,000 on retrofitting it, and we get $12,000 for the next 3 years. And we've got the opportunity to buy the property if we want. So effectively, I've spent 10 and I'm getting 30-something thousand dollars back. Now, for me, $36,000 back for a 10 grand spend is a pretty good outcome. And that gives you and leads you on to the next one. So there's huge, huge potential, even if you've got very little money. Now, house in multiple occupation, or HMO as we call it, is something that we have brought to the market. It's actually a UK model. And let me give you a couple. Basically, it's actually taking a house and having an insurance policy and fire and safety installation so that it can be legally rented out as long as you have one lease on the property. And this is what we've born and termed the rentrepreneur. Now, this is where I go and I find someone else's property. Now, we teach you how to do this. We teach you how to talk to the agent. We give you all the details of why an agent and why a vendor or landlord will actually allow you to rent their property, and you give full disclosure what you're going to do to it, and you then rent it. So that property in Brisbane that we spent 10 grand on, we pay $400 a week for, and we get $870 a week, I think. So, when you look at what you can do, this is the new rise. This is the new way of investing in property, plus the normal old way with our strategies put on top. Our strategies are taking existing, normal, everyday strategies in property and putting them on steroids. That's what we do in high res. So have a look at this. This is Cara. So and I'll give you some more detail at the end of the hour on how this works. But basically, she had a $2,500 negative property. It was her own. And she turned that into over $8,000 in 2 weeks, just by learning what we taught her. She then goes and gets her ex-boyfriend's house, who actually owns exactly the same property, rents it for him, makes $12,000 out of him a year. She then goes and does it. She's got 5 other properties currently that she owns one of them, and she rents 4 of them and makes money out of each one of them. She's actually replaced her income in a year. She's done pretty well. You've got Karina. Now, if you tonight want to be part of the community, there'll be a process for you to go through, and one of them will be talking to Karina. And Karina helps us out because of what we've done for her. She is the classic rentrepreneur. Now, she did it very quickly, and she, in 2 Sydney properties, has $60,000 of cash flow after costs. So that's after paying everyone. Takes her a day a week to manage this, and she gets $60,000. That's an awesome hourly rate. Now, I don't like university students in my properties for particular reasons. Now, if you decide to go down that track, that's fine. Go for international and make sure you lock them in long term, and make sure you know that there's particular times that you should lock them into a lease and make sure they finish at a particular time if they're going to go out. I prefer hospitals because hospitals have got 2 types of people, hospital workers and the patients' families, where they can stay there because they've had to travel for 300, 400 Ks. This is a big hub for employment, and same as industrial areas, same as airports, like really great places to have this style of accommodation. If you want to check out your room rates, we'll actually show you how to test the market and make sure that you test the market properly with a template and photos that you can put up and you can see the results. And the results are good, just don't go into that market, don't convert your property or don't go and become a rentrepreneur, go on to the next area. There's not many areas where this does not work. This works in most areas. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of different bodies. Now, I put this up on purpose because there's huge amount of acts and different legislation and policies and compliance that you need to adhere to. And what we've done is we've taken a fairly complicated and sophisticated strategy and simplified it down into flowcharts, into simple learning, and we've supported you with teams around you to make sure that you know what you're doing, how you're doing, so that all the confusion is broken down. It's really, really important, and I know with a degree of education that I needed to do that to make sure that you were right. Now, councils say no because they only want one household in a normal house, which is why we teach the strategy of multiple different people in one house using the correct policies. And then council says yes. I'm sorry about that. I'm Sunshine Coast. The internet's not great. So again, if you go to Firefox or to Chrome, it should be better. Now let's talk about state-by-state policies. Let's start with Tasmania. Tasmania is actually working with me, and I have meetings next week with the Treasurer and the Deputy Premier, and the Treasurer happens to be the Minister for Planning, Minister for Housing. So he's got the money and he's got the ability to make decisions. They're going to bring a policy in that's going to make a huge game change for the whole of Tasmania. Now, Tasmania is relatively cheap to go into. It hasn't had the same capital growth as Sydney and Melbourne, but it also needs to get to 50% of the median house price, and it's nowhere near the 50% median house price of Sydney. So if you go down there, you're going to expect that, according to what's happened in the last 200 years in Australia, that there's going to be an increase in capital, but at the same time, with this policy, you would be making a really great cash flow. You might be spending $200,000 for around a $10,000 to $15,000 cash flow. That's pretty awesome for that style of property. This is one of ours. This is actually an existing factory that we purchased. We settled on that last week. We got a approval very quickly through council, 32 days to get through council. And this here is actually 16 micro apartments and 2 shops. This one has a 38% cash on cash return. You put your money into a bank account and you get 2.5%. We're getting a 38% return on our money. New South Wales New Generation Boarding House policy says that you can go and you can produce as long as in 7 different zones. Now, in low density zone, if you're within 400 metres of a bus stop or a train, 800 metres of a train station or ferry, you can build a new generation boarding house policy. Now, get this. They've written a policy by state government that if you tick all the boxes, the council's not allowed to refuse your application. So you put your application into council and they approve it. And you can put in every one of those rooms their own bathroom, their own kitchen, and their own living, dining, sleeping area. So you're effectively putting a studio together of between 22 to 35 square meters in total, and that's the perfect size for a micro apartment. And people rent them all day long, and they love them. They absolutely love them. Smaller space means less, and it doesn't cost them as much. Now, if you build a new generation boarding house in New South Wales, you'll also get a land tax exemption, so that's zero land tax. You'll also have the ability to apply to the state government for every brand new room that you provide to the market that has its own ensuite, so it has to be self-contained. For every brand new one that you self-contain, you can put an application in and get funding on approval for every room of up to $2,000 per room for the first 5 years. So that's $10,000 that you can be getting if you do this style of accommodation in New South Wales, and it can be anywhere. Okay, this is New South Wales state-based policy, amazing policy. This is a house that is on the Northern Beaches, and on the Northern Beaches, this is $1 million house, would rent for about $795, with negative cash flow of about $14,000. You put a granny flat on the back, it would be neutral. Instead, what they did was they converted the front house, which is this house here. So you can, let me get my pen out here. So you can see here that this is the old house. This is 1 room, 2 rooms, 3 rooms, 4 rooms of conversion in the old house. And where they would have put the granny flat out the back, they put 4 self-contained rooms that have their own courtyard. Now, in this one here, they actually expected to get $350 a week rent. They got $450 a week, which means that there's $60,000 cash flow, not $40,000, in Sydney on the northern beaches with the same capital growth that's growing in Sydney. Now, the beauty with this one here is that these rooms here, and I know actually one of our architects' daughters went in to rent one of these, and so that means that she can stay in the area and she can happily save some money, especially if she's got some partner. In the next 4 or 5 years, she's in a position to be able to own and buy a property in the same area. In New South Wales, it's a very exciting policy because also if you build only 4 rooms, you can actually get this through a private certifier, lend at 80%, and then go back to council and get approval for a new generation boarding house that has 4 self-contained rooms, 140 square metres, and then you're in a position where you've got some great rent coming in, great strategy. I talk about this in the boot camp and I even up it even further. Brisbane has a great policy that allows you to put 5 self-contained rooms into one house using a private certifier. So you don't even have to go to council and you can do it in low density residential zoning. So this is a house we were involved in this project. This is a dual lot single title, and I teach you about that in the program. And this house gets an excavator put through the middle of it. We build this property here. So we build 2 houses. Each one of them has 5 self-contained rooms in it. They have their own bathroom, their own kitchen, their own living area, and they share a communal kitchen as well. Now, this one, that's 10 rooms in total. This one here, and this is a screenshot of one of the feasibilities we would provide for you. We spent $400,000 on the purchase. We spent $800,000 just over on the actual cost. And if I was a standard investor, I would get $1,200 a week. But instead, because we built this, we're getting $2,600. We more than doubled our rent. And if I was a normal investor, I'd get negative $8,000 cash flow. Because I built this in Brisbane with capital growth growing at the rate it's growing, I've got over $45,000 of cash flow on that property. Now, you cannot do that on a standard investment strategy, and people love it. This is what they get. They get their own bedroom. So up here, you can see their own bed. They've got their own kitchenette. This is where they cook on their own stove in their own kitchen. This is their own bathroom in here. And this is the communal area that they share with other people. But they don't need to share it with other people because they've got a lounge. They've got their own everything in there. Everything is fine. And this property increased in price because of what we did by $300,000. Now, this is the sort of stuff that you could be doing. Victoria has a great exemption under the state government, which allows you to go to a building surveyor, which is the same as a certifier, 21-day approval, and you can convert an existing house in low residential zoning to this style of property. Now, that's not the most beautiful bathroom in the world, but in that bathroom there, that room rents for $290, and I can rent the house next door for $360. So why does someone take $290 a week rent for one small room, well, one master bedroom with an ensuite, when they can rent a whole house for $360? And there's a couple of reasons. Firstly, next door, they have to clean the whole house. Secondly, next door, they have to pick up the cost of utilities. And thirdly, $60 is a lot of money to some people some weeks. So you've got to be really understanding that, you know, we're not talking about low end. We're talking about people that just want to be able to live in this suburb and do really well out of it. That's $35,000 cash flow. This one here is our team down there will actually can build and sell if you want to buy from them. Now, they're always short of stock because as soon as they put it out, people buy. But buying something for $400,000 to get a $20,000 after cost return, and they look after the property for you and put people in there and do the whole lot. You simply just have to sit back and make sure they're doing their job and you get cash flow. In WA, you've got the ability to put up to 6 people into a house that does not comprise a single family, which is a great thing. Now, this is a deal down there where the guy went and did a subdivision, so subdivided land off, and then built, you can see this property here, which is 6 bedrooms, 6 bathroom, and a little kitchenette. This one here, apart from the fact that it's actually gone up in value, is $37,000 cash flow. Now, you could take this property, and Perth is on its knees at the moment. It's the best place to be and the most desired place because people that used to be on mining wages are now actually needing smaller spaces because they don't have a job so they do have a job, but it's not a great job. Over there, Neil and Joe are our team over there. They converted an existing property into a $15,000 income, which used to be a negative. We used to cost them every week. This is a few and far between strategy. It's what I talk about at boot camp, and I'll talk about it in detail. But essentially, this is 2 hours from nowhere. Now, this couple here and their son took $110,000, turned it into over $1 million worth of property in 18 months with $90,000 worth of income using this exact strategy in a town 10 hours from nowhere, 10 hours drive from the major city. This is the sort of stuff you could be doing. South Australia, $280,000 purchase with a 14% cash-on-cash return. Put your money in a bank account, you get 2.5%. Here you get 14%. Now, I'll break down numbers further into the second hour. So I'm just quickly going through the strategies because I had to talk quickly. So we've got the HMO rental market, we've got executive rental, holiday rental, rooming houses and boarding houses. And I just want to quickly take you through what we do in the program and how we do it. So don't leave yet because we've got so much more to get through. And if you can stay on board, I want you to listen to everything that we've got to say. Now, our program, which is high-res, high-income real estate system, starts with a 2-day boot camp. Remember, in Melbourne, so South Australia, Melbourne, WA, Brisbane are all private certified approval. So you go to a building surveyor, not the council, and get approval. In Tasmania, it's a 28-day approval sometimes, up to 42 days maximum. In New South Wales, it'll be a council application, but they can't refuse your application. So in high-res, this is where our team comes along. I give you 2 days of information non-stop, and you take on as much as you can. Now, I know that a live boot camp is very difficult to take on a lot of information, so we've actually recorded 2 live boot camps, and they're up on our website. So as soon as you come aboard tonight and make a decision to have an interview to talk to Karina, you've got an ability to be able to make sure that you know your stuff already, and you can stop me, slow me down, go again. We've got 8 modules. The first module is the whole system. How does it work? What's involved in it? Where do you go to? Who are the teams? The second module is about getting a double-digit returns. Now, remember I talked about making sure you get double-digit returns and not just single-digit low returns like Melbourne and Sydney are giving right now. Module 3 is your state-by-state policies. So why go into Western Australia when you're only interested in Victoria or something else? Just go to Victoria. Now, all of these modules are about 45 minutes to 1 hour long videos where you can stop and rewind me and go again. Module 4 is about taking your holiday rentals and making more of it. And we've got a brilliant team that looks after you, and they've actually got a great platform that links 50 different websites. Let's talk about executive rental here as well. This is one of ours. We only rent it for 3 months of the year as a holiday stay. It's a destination place, and for the rest of the year, 9 months, we rent it to someone else. This one here was our team that went down to Melbourne, looked at a student that couldn't get $730 a week, and they're now getting $1,300 plus a week. Like, that's a pretty awesome turnaround just by becoming part of high res. That student is extremely happy because they essentially got their money paid off in the first couple of months after joining high res by doing what they're doing. Module 5 is checklists, flowcharts, processes, templates, all the downloads and how it works. Now, we've got a step-by-step system that if you don't want to watch videos, if you don't want to read a manual, you can just get on and start with our flowcharts. We've got a brilliant flowchart person in the office, and she's amazing. She actually runs our office, and she's put that all together, all the templates and that you need. Module 6 is about talking to the property owners, because I know there's a lot of, and the agents. So the agents are one that some of them, we've got agents for you. If there's no agent in the area that we need to provide for you, then we'll teach you how to talk to them and get them on board, because there's many advantages for an agent. Module 7 is about looking at your existing portfolios. Now, existing portfolios are sitting there waiting to be converted. And for 70% of you that already own a property, you are in a position where you can actually turn your portfolio around really quickly right now. This is a student that was costing them $450 a week, and they turned that around to $28,000 cash flow. That's pretty awesome. Module 8 is about the due diligence, where you need to go to. We've actually got a 23-step process to teach you where you're going to buy, what you're going to buy, what strategy you're going to do, how much it's going to cost you, who are the people you need to talk to, the due diligence that's required, everything that you need to know so that you can confidently purchase. Now, remember, we want to teach you how to fish, not want to throw any fish at you. And it's a really important fact. Module 9 and 11, I couldn't fit in 8 modules, so we did refinancing. Now, refinancing is a thing that when you go to a bigger scale, you will need to go to 60, 70%. We've got one lender that will go to 75%, but when you start smaller, and that's where I want you to start, you'll start at 80%, and you'll do a retrofit after the finance has been done, and I'll show you how to do that. We've got case studies of students that have done this day in, day out, and we've recorded them and got them through to the next level for you, and the fees as a number. Now, Christine, my wife, is an accountant, and she has put together about 14 different feasibilities on different circumstances that you will be able to use. She's put a video together on each one of them, and you don't have to learn how to do numbers. All you have to learn is how to find numbers and put them into boxes, and that's what that last module is about. We also have a weekly email that comes out to you, and that's just to motivate you, to give you some information. And I know what it's like because I've been through this process. I know how it is to get up every morning and actually stay on track. We have a members-only website, and that's access only to the members that have paid. You can't access this in any other way. And all the information that I just spoke about is on that website, and you will get login details almost immediately as soon as you come on board, so that you can, as soon as you have a chat with Karina and you agree and we agree that it's the right thing for you, you can do that. We have project case studies. So we've got about 15 different projects at different levels that we will take you through the first step, then the second step, the third step, and that happens at any point in time, Facebook Lives. Now, we've got a Facebook page that I'd like you to join. And on that Facebook page, when you are a member and you join it, this is where all the questions get asked and all the answers come up. And it's a really supportive community. Remember, I said from the beginning. Now, I don't say this because it's my community, because I've been involved in many, many communities. I was 2IC of probably the largest real estate education program in the country. And from watching what they've done and others have done, this is a really active page. Now, what do you get? You get the live boot camp, you get the 8 modules plus the extra 3. You have a step-by-step systems manual, which is about 900 pages that you can download and print if you want to, or just read it online. We've got the DVDs or the boot camp recordings up online, and we have a lifetime access. Now, remember, I've got a really, really big goal here. And if I gave you a 1-year program, it would be absolutely useless to you. So what we've done is we've put together a lifetime project. So over the next 10 years, at least, as long as I've got my goal in place, you're on board and ready to come aboard, then you'll have lifetime access. You've got the checklist and the downloads and all the inventories and everything that you need in the processes. We've got the weekly emails and the private Facebook group for you. Now, if you want to do that, you have to book in for an appointment time. And to book in for an appointment time, I will just open up for you the offer so that you can see that. And you should be able to see an offer on your page now that you can simply book in for a time. And Karina will sit down and talk with you. Now, the reason we do it this way is because, as you can see, I'm very high on my emotion and where I place my heart and how I want my community to run. And I want to make sure that you're right for us and that we're right for you. And so Karina will take you through a process of a few questions just to see what is it that you want to achieve and how you're going to achieve it, and is it going to fit in with our morals and basis. Now, I'm okay. If you just want to go out and make money, I'm okay with that. But what I want you to make sure is that you actually are making money and fixing and helping the community at the same time, because I'm not in about just making money. We have a catchphrase in this office that says it needs to make sense before it makes dollars. Okay, it needs to make sense before it makes dollars. So it's important that you understand that we are in this game to help people out. We're also in this game to make money. We can sit at home and go broke. We don't have to go out and do property deals to do it. So it's okay to make money. I don't have any problem whatsoever. But for me, community comes first, money comes second, and I have to do both. If I don't achieve both of those, I don't do the project. And this is what this interview process is about. So let's look at any questions that you might have. So your chat box is open. You can ask some questions in there. And what I might do as I'm going along is I'll take you through some information and some case studies of students that have done their stuff. Now, this is Mark. Mark looks after our properties for the short stay rental market. And when I say that, he looks after our students. Now, when you look at the holiday or short stay rental, and we're talking about Airbnb and Stays and every other company that's available, and most people only concentrate on Airbnb and Stays. But if you look at the numbers here, $12,249 coming in for a permanent 6-month rental versus $22,000. It's absolutely free to have a chat. Just book in. There's no cost. There's no charge. We're not that type style of community. If you want to have a chat and talk to Karina, go for your life, have it. There's no obligation whatsoever for you to join. There's no obligation for you to pay for anything. I want you to be in this because it's for the right reasons. Now, if you did a short stay for 6 months, you would actually, even with a vacancy rate, you are still in a position of knowing that it's more than almost double of the income that you'd be coming on a short week. Now, I don't need to tell you the cost of the program. The important thing here is that you talk to Karina and that you ask her the questions to make sure it's right for you, and she can talk to you if she believes that. And remember, I need to know that you're right for the community. So she has a number of checklists that she will tick off to make sure that you fit in and do what we do. Now, this is one that our short stay market took on, and they manage for our student, and they get paid for it. They make a management fee. But before the restyling, they were getting $500 a week. They're now getting $1,200 a week average, okay? So there's sometimes more, there's sometimes less, but on average, that's $1,200 for $6,000 spent. Like, that's a good return on your money. You look at this one here, saying this is just the same property but styled up and actually fixed up and furnished. This one here is a Maroubra case study where the team actually renovated it for them. So the clients paid up front money. I think it was $32,000. So $32,000 to furnish and renovate it. And they went from $600 a week to $1,300 a week. Do I have to keep it and rent it out? I would prefer to build and sell them. Are they saleable? They are saleable, but Diane, you won't be selling these. I'm telling you, you can keep these and then go and build the next one because of the strategies that we will teach you. Now you can build them all day long if that's what you want to do. We've got clients everywhere that are looking for more of them. If you want to build them and sell them. So you can literally sell them like a commercial property because they act like a cap rate, and they turn out really well. So again, this is the same property from $600 to $1,300 a week on the eastern suburbs of Sydney. So if you want to, make sure that you hit that link. You press the button there to go through and book your time in. Now, you can also just put in this link if you want, the long way. The cash flow seems it would allow to build deep over and over, correct? Yeah. Because you've got cash flow, it means that you're actually increasing your income and putting yourself into a better situation every time, which means banks like you refinance your property, you go off and you invest again. Now, remember, I want you to pay down your debt as much as you possibly can. So the cash flow will continue. Now, I put in here retrofitting, and the reason I put in retrofitting is simply because this is an existing property that had a retrofit put into it. Now, when you look at the floor plan here has an extra living room. It has a really large family room. It has meals. It's got this alfresco area. It's got a rumpus room. And they're all asking, now this is Victoria. Now in Victoria, you can do up to 10 habitable rooms in one house in a low density zone, and you don't have to go to council. And so, when you look at it, what they did, these students went in, and you can see they put 2 bedrooms in here. They added a disabled bathroom in here, turned this into a bedroom and this into a bedroom. And this one here went from a negative cash flow property. They then bought this, and they bought it really well. And they're getting $24,000 cash flow out of this property. That's an 18.6% cash on cash return. Now, we do deal with commercial properties. I'll actually show you one very soon. We've actually got, we do them all the time, and it's actually one of our preferred strategies where we mix commercial and residential together. So when you look at these numbers, they spend, essentially they can refinance at $450, but they have got 18.6%. That's $24,000 spent cash flow coming from a property that was roughly about $415,000 spent. So remember that the programs has the live DVDs, the live boot camp, you've got the DVD recordings, you've got all the 11 modules put on there, you've got lifetime access, remember, lifetime access. We've got the lifetime access to the website, we've got the systems checklist and downloads, the weekly on-track emails to keep you on board, the really strong community private Facebook group that gives you all the answers you need. This one here is South Australia. Now, this was a student had existing portfolio, and this property was there. Now, they happened to buy this in 2005. Now, the numbers, even if you bought this today, now South Australia is full of these duplexes that you can buy at very low cost. Now, this one here today would be worth $740,000 after they did that work. The numbers on this one here are pretty good. So if you looked at the costs, the end value would be $570 just from what they did, but they bought it in early. And so if they went in there today, they went through, they got the classification, they used our team down there to get all the approval and the management. This is what it looks like inside. This is the fire management plan. And the numbers on this one here is that it's got cash flow of $28,000. Now, if you did it as because they bought it a while ago, their cash flow was about $10,000 because it was low debt. But by doing this and subdividing and doing what they did, they ended up learning the strategies, employing and implementing the strategies, and they've now got $28,000 cash flow. Now, even if you went out and bought this today, you would probably get about $15,000 to $18,000 cash flow if you bought in South Australia right now and used our teams to set up. So remember, you can click the button through, speak to Karina. She'll ask you some questions. There's no cost to doing that. It's just part of the opportunity to become part of the high-res program. So Marco and Angelica, they say that in Sydney you can't make money in property. Well, how about the rentrepreneurs that they became? This is in Sydney, in a good area in Sydney. And from this, they used a HMO strategy. From this one here, they're getting $14,000 cash flow. Now, this was their first one. And in hindsight, they said we would have done a few things differently. We would have got more cash flow. So the second one they did. Now, they don't own this property. Now, the beauty with a rentrepreneur is if the heater breaks down, the owner has to pay for it. If any maintenance has to be done, the owner has to pay for it. So your costs are very low and your risk is very low as well, because you can always rent it to a normal family if you can't rent it. Now, this is full approval from the landlord, from the agent, and done with full compliance and insurance policy. Their second one they went off and did. The second one they went off and did this one. They furnished it and they did it really nicely. Someone else's property. Now, this one makes $40,000 a year. It's a high-end suburb of Sydney, a really high-end demand. Now, remember, when someone wants to rent something affordably, it doesn't matter whether you're in a place that rents for $2,000 a week or $150 a week. It depends on how much you earn and where you want to live. So, for example, if someone wants to live in Double Bay in Sydney, and they have to pay $2,500 for a house, $3,000 for a house, they're happy to pay $600 or $700 a week if they want to live in that area. And if they can't afford it, they'll just move to another area. You provide the rooms and they'll move to them. Now, this is Kara's numbers so that you can see it. Now, Kara's numbers were negative $2,500 and she turned that around to over $8,000. It's now $10,000 on this property as we stand, and she's got 5 or 6 others now done and dusted. So remember to get into Karina, press the link that's there. The offer is there for you so that you can press through and just book a time. This is one of ours. Now, we are at Muhsin asked about the commercial property. Now, this is a commercial property, so downstairs is our commercial part of it. It's actually a shop front, and upstairs we've got, and behind, we've got 20 rooms going in. Now, 20 rooms at $350 a week. The 5-year lease put on place in this one, and this one here will cost about $2.5 million for a $4.5 million end value. Now, I don't want you going and doing this first up. I want you to understand and learn the strategies first, and then build yourself up to this. This one will replace the income I used to earn at TAFE. So every deal you do from that point forward will make a big difference to you. This one here is the numbers that I showed you in Brisbane, and let me show you those numbers. So the numbers on this one is, if you're a normal standard investor, you'd lose about $7,000 a week. But because we had each one of those rooms rent for $260, we could actually rent them for $300. We're losing 20 grand cash flow a year because we can and we don't need the cash flow. So for us, people in this property, and the beauty with this style of accommodation is when all you need is 60% occupancy and you're neutral. Above that, you're actually getting cash flow. So the beauty with this is, if you've got a normal rental property, you get zero rent when there's no one in there. You get at least some rent coming in and always neutral, if not positive cash flow. And when they move out, someone moves in within the next 2 or 3 days. This is the sort of thing that happens all day long. So remember, you can come on the private Facebook group where all the questions get asked, and I can do some designs and I can put them on there for you and pull them off and put them back on again. We've got the weekly emails, we've got the systems checklists, the templates, the downloads, all the different parts and components of what you need. The lifetime access to everything that we have. We've got the step-by-step systems manual, the DVDs, which are a recorded boot camp up online. You have the 11 modules, and the live boot camp, and the live boot camp is included for yourself. And if you talk to Karina, you might be able to talk her into getting the partner included. Now, remember this one here. I'll take you through the numbers on this one here so you can see them. The buy price was $210,000. If they spent 10 grand, they would have got 4 grand cash flow, but instead they spent $30,000 to do the upgrade to this property and now getting over $30,000 cash flow. That's a really amazing turnaround for the property. This one here is a vendor finance deal. This is where the little old lady and the little old man that owned this forever decided that they wanted to sell it. So they spoke to our clients, our students spoke to them and said, what are you doing with it? We're just going to sell it and put our money in the bank account. So they said, well, why don't we buy it from you, but you become the bank and we'll pay you 6%. And the owner said, you know, it's all right. I've got protection. I've got first mortgage. If you don't pay the weekly cost, then, you know, we can just take the property back. So they did this, and the little old lady and little old man were quite happy because they had much more cash flow coming in than just leaving it into the bank account. And they spent about $15,000 on this and ended up with $27,000 cash flow coming out of it. This is in Victoria. So these are the things you can do. Make sure you speak to Karina. All you have to do is just press that button. This is a Victorian deal as well. We've got them all over the country. I've got a couple of Victorian deals here. Now, this one here is a renovation of the front house, subdivide off the back because we'll teach you how to do that, and then build this floor plan out the back. Now, this one here, they renovated the front house and sold it for $450,000. The back block of land owed them about $70,000. They built a 7-bedroom, and you can see it's not the prettiest of houses in the world, but you don't need pretty. You simply just need to fit in with the character of the neighborhood. Disabled car spot, you can tell by the bollard there. $22,000 of income, over $250,000 of increased price on that property. This one's another entrepreneur, $15,000, little old lady that didn't want to get too much rent because her pension would get affected. So student comes along, 6 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, converts that and gets $15,000 in the first year. So remember that everything is included. Everything you need to go from beginning to end is there for you. We've got the teams there for you. We've got the boot camp, the Facebook page, everything that you need to look at to do that. All you need to do is speak to Karina and go through that. So anyone, there's still quite a few people on there, and thank you for sticking around for an hour. And I know I spoke a lot today and I spoke very quickly, and there's a lot of questions that you probably got asking. So I'd like you to ask some questions. I've got some other questions that came in separately earlier today from a number of different people, and I can go through those questions. So let me take you back to the questions page, and I'll go through the different questions that normally get asked when you get there. So just type your question in, and I will talk about the questions that you've got and make sure you work through it. Okay, so the first question is usually utilities. What if they use too much utilities and end up costing you too much money? Well, there's a number of different ways we actually look after that, and one of them is management. And making sure that the people inside are managed. The second one is if you're building new, we make sure that you build new and that you do it in a way that actually puts you in a position where you can measure them. And if you can measure people individually, you can charge them individually. So what we normally do is we simply just go in and what we do is we include in their utilities, in their rent, is their utilities every 3 months. We include $100. And if they use too much, then what we do is we simply go in, read their meters and charge them because we can read it. Now, if you can't read their meters, then what we want to do is we want to make sure that they have specific remote controls and air conditioners and heaters that don't use the power that you don't want to have to pay for. And we've got specific air conditioners, remote controls that will make a big difference to the understanding of how much they're going to use and how they're going to do that. So that's one question. Agents. People always ask around the agents and, you know, whether the agents will look after these. There are agents, most of them, that will say no. But remember, we've got specific agents, and we've also got a way of teaching you to teach them that this is a big benefit towards them, that this is right for them, that they can earn more money from you, and subsequently you can earn more money too. You know, there's a number of different circumstances that are, you know, pertinent to making sure that you manage managers. It's really, really important. People always ask about the residents. You know, you've got a number of different mix of residents, and how is it that they don't fight all the time? Well, you know what? people in blocks of units, people in villas, people out in normal suburbia argue all the time. Now, we know within 2 days whether the person is right for the property or not, and we make sure that we make movement to either move them on or move them into another property where they are better suited. Now, remember, I actually like to mix demographics, not overly, like I don't put a 19-year-old with a 70-year-old, but, you know, if I've got a 25, 30-year-old, I'll put them with a 45-year-old and a 55-year-old and possibly a 70-year-old as well. And it creates a really nice household of different people with different ages, different stories, and, you know, they learn from each other, which is really great. That's where we've lost our community. Now, with residents, there's always a process we go through, making sure that they check out, that they have a good history, and then we put them into our properties. I'd rather have a room empty than put someone in that I know is going to be trouble for me, and you should know that too. Jane says investment in solar power. Yes, we actually do that all the time. There's a number of different ways that we can put solar up on the roof, including hot water and including PV, to make a difference to our costs every week. And it's a great suggestion. There's a number of companies actually finance that to happen up on the roof too. The other question we get asked all the time is financing. Now, currently I'm working really hard on a number of different levels with the lending fraternities. And like I said, we've got one lender in particular that will work with you and via our Cara, who's one of our team. And they can give you up to 75%. What I'm doing at the moment is I'm speaking with Mark Boris to get to the point where banks understand that this is actually a lower risk property than a normal residential property, because the rent coming in for this is always going to be coming in, and that it's a good turnaround and that the income is better than normal. Plus, we can also show them that there's a number of people that are buying this style of property and don't even need well, they don't need to sell it. But secondly, when they do sell them, they're selling with really, really good high prices. So, you know, it's really important. I have a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom brick house in Pimpana, Queensland, with basically no backyard at all. It's upside down and horribly negative at the moment. Are those types of houses convertible? Yeah, absolutely. You would be able to do a HMO. Now, we would make sure that you test the market first and that you get, you know, our fire and safety guy, the head guy's in Brisbane. So he'd go there and he'd go and do the work that's required on that one. And you would then talk to Karen, who's our insurance girl, and she would help you out and make sure the insurance is right. And then down there, I think we might have Rebecca in the office might have just spoken to an agent down there, but regardless, there's still people in there that are helpful to you. So Deborah, yeah, look, it's really a really simple and easy strategy to implement on a 4-bedroom house. You know, I've got students actually buy in and from people that are upside down and hurting a lot. They're actually buying these properties from them and turning them around and getting good cash flow and getting a good return on them. So, you know, really, really important and really great point, Deborah, because, you know, being this negative gearing, and I'm sure you didn't expect to buy into something that was going to hurt you on a weekly basis. And I tell you, I made 6 of those mistakes. They were ridiculous. We had a portfolio of 7 properties and 6 of them were just upside down really badly. And like I said, we had to lose money to get out, and I don't want you to going down that. When you have micro apartments with common open space, how do you spread the cost in cleaning? So we actually employ cleaners to go in, and we get people to take care of the gardens every 2 weeks, basically. And there are house rules for people when they're using the common areas. So there is no cost to the people that stay in our micro apartments unless they overuse the money. And remember, I can't charge people unless I can measure them individually. So every time we build brand new, I make sure I wire back to my switchboard individually, and I've got an aftermarket reader, and then I can make sure that I can read them and I can say, well, you've used too much. Now, we can actually do that remotely if we want to, but generally what we say is we watch the properties and we basically know how much money the utilities should cost you on a quarterly basis. And when there's a spike, what we do is we go back and read the meters and we go, okay, well, you've used too much power this time and you're going to have to pay for it. Now, there's another way if you can't read it, simply notifying people that the rents are going to go up because there's an increase to utility prices. Usually about 95% of the time pulls the usage down in the household. So, you know, there's good ways to go about it. Okay, so there's not enough questions coming in. I can make up questions if you want. I can go back to the other questions. One of the other questions is, you know, do you get the same capital growth in regional area versus Sydney area if I do this strategy? Well, it's the same question of whether you do this strategy or not. If you do your research and have a look at regional versus capital cities, prices rise exactly the same amount as a percentage, right? So if you had to go and buy something for $400,000 in the city somewhere, in a city, not Sydney, obviously, and you buy something for $100,000 and it increases in price every 7 to 10 years, then the city one will be worth 800 and the regional one will be worth 200. They still doubled in price. It's just that the numbers were different. And so people talk about that all the time. People say, oh yeah, but there won't be any demand for these at the back end if I wanted to sell them. There'll be huge demand. There is so much demand for these that there's people lining up to buy them, seriously lining up to buy them. Council perceptions, we're at a tipping point because the councils and the locals have jumped up and down. So what we're at now is the council's fought it for a while. They're not winning. They haven't been winning. So they now say, well, if they tick the boxes, we have to approve them. And the locals are complaining, then they get built. And then all of a sudden they're saying, oh, hang on, there's no complaints. So what were we worried about? Why don't you just charge the electricity to the tenants divided? Because it's illegal to do it, Yaman. So unless I can legally measure their electricity usage, I can't take a bill of $500 and split it in between everyone. It's illegal. It's against the Residential Tenancy Acts. Okay, it's unfair because some person will use more and some people will use less, and it's not fair on every individual. So unless you can measure the metering, you're not allowed to legally charge them. Remember, full compliance. What's the time frame of converting a 1A into a 1B building and refinancing to pull the equity out? What's the LVR and financing? 1B straight away. So Robert, what I would be doing is I would be doing a 2-step process conversion. So that is, you do a 1A renovation of the building, you then finance it at 80% or higher if you can get it, and then you convert it to 1B. All right. So this is where we would teach you multiple strategies in one deal. And on the LVR component, like I said earlier, we're getting 75% for one lender, and all I'm trying to work on, like I said, I'm working with Mark Boris at the moment, is to get an 80% lend at a higher interest rate. I don't care, paying an extra 1% in interest is really not a big deal when you talk about this style of accommodation. We have a DA and council are currently for 64 apartments in Sydney. What strategy would you suggest to get a better usage and higher yield? Well, we'll be teaching you strategies in an R4 zone where out of those 64 apartments, we would be asking you to do slightly different style of accommodation in some of them. Obviously, at 64, you're probably going to sell a few of them or some of them. And I would be suggesting to you, Serena, that we would be looking at multiple different strategies in that apartment block that will give you really great returns. And I'll teach you in the boot camp, I'll show you a New South Wales development, which no one has ever done before, but because of my input into the design, they've done it in a number of different ways. And so the design, I'm a small space specialist. That's my position on the task force. And as a small space specialist, I get called in by developers and I consult to them at a reasonably high price. And I say to them, okay, this is how you need to do your space. I would change the design, move that room there, move that bathroom, move that hallway, change that doorway. And that's where we get into a better zone. So a better usage of the property and a better return ultimately. And remember, all of this is catering for people that don't want to pay for a 4-bedroom house. They want just a smaller space. And most of them, just all of them work. Most of them work. And even if you look, one of our teams looks after low socio, lower economic people. They aren't bad people. They're good tenants. They're just a different set of circumstances. And when you cater for low socio, you can actually get payment directly from the Commonwealth government. Instead of their Centrelink payments going to them, they go into your bank account. Now, that's a pretty good offer as far as I was concerned, right? So remember that you've got all the things that are included here are the boot camp. You've got the 11 modules that are video modules. You have the step-by-step systems manual, which is about 900 pages up online. We've got 2 recorded boot camps that are up online, ready for you to watch straight away. We have the lifetime access to the members only website. We have the high income system checklist downloads, templates, inventory lists, everything there. The weekly emails and the private Facebook group. Now, remember that the next boot camp, there's always one in the city that's down the East Coast. We will look at Perth and Adelaide if we have the right numbers. Now, remember, I take my whole team with me from all over the country. So effectively, I'm bringing 16 to 17 people every time, and I fly them in and I accommodate them and I bring them to the table so that you can talk to them face to face and you can meet them and you can understand what they do. So remember to next boot camp in Brisbane's in March, but don't stop talking to Karina just because it's in then, because we've got the boot camps already recorded and you can start watching it straight away. So remember to speak to Karina, just go straight through, press that link, and then you'll be able to talk to her, or you'll be able to make an appointment to talk to her. And like I said, she basically spends 1 day a week looking after her HMOs. She then gives me some time because as part of the community, she's done really well and she has the extra time and she's happy to help us out and actually grow this community. And remember, 1 million properties in 10 years is our big audacious goal. And that's what, and 10,000 of those will be ours. Hopefully there'll be multiple people that'll have more than 10,000 rooms. That's all I want. At 10,000 rooms, in the short term, we'll be doing really well. In the long term, we'll be helping out the community like no one else has ever helped before. And I'm really looking forward to all of you coming along and being part of the community if you've got the same thinking, the same process. So really want to have you on. So we've been on for about an hour and a half. I'll give you a couple of more minutes if I get another question or two. If not, I will call it a night. My throat is never great when I'm talking to a computer. I'm much better when I've got a microphone sitting in front of my mouth, because I don't throw my voice like I do with this computer. So, like I said, it's been just the last 4 years has been absolutely amazing for me. There's always a hiccup along the way. There always is. So remember, property is not an easy game. If it was an easy game, everyone would be doing it. I want you to understand that what we've done is we've cracked the code on helping everyone at the same time, which is really, really, really exciting. I hit media all the time. I'll be on Sky Real Estate very soon, Sky Business. You'll see me all over the place. Now that you've seen my face, now that you know who I am, you'll start to see me a lot. Now, I will only work with my students closely, and so I want you to give yourself at least the conversation with Karina so that you can take yourself to the next level and possibly turn around that pimpana properly, so you haven't got negative gearing holding you down. So guys, it's been over an hour and a half now that I'm going to call it quits, and I want to thank you. Sorry, a couple of questions. Do you have dates for Sydney Boot Camp? That'll be in June next year, but just remember, Matthew, James, anyone listening, the boot camp is not important. The boot camp is a part of the program. So it's important for learning over 2 days, but what's important is that you learn what we've put in place on the website. The boot camp's great to meet people face to face. So if you're thinking, don't start, I'm not going to start until the middle of next year because he's not coming to Sydney, you've missed the boat. Be part of this straight up. Give yourself the opportunity. Thanks, James. I appreciate it. And so Brisbane will be March next year. Stop asking me about the boot camps. Jesus. And I very, very, very much appreciate what you've said there, James. I put my heart on the table sometimes, and I just want people to understand that we're all in it for the right reasons here, and most of you have listened for the right reasons tonight. And if you're in it for the money, I'm okay with that as long as you're not using and abusing the community. Make it worth your while, make it worth their while. So have a great night, and thanks for being here. I really, really enjoyed it. And hopefully you'll talk to Karina and talk to me very soon. Cheers. See ya.